I feel better. You're out to get here, so now I'm all scared. I'm like, I'm not. I don't want to, right? Like, and I'm like, that's good. So we're going to get I might have that. And I'm like,
There you go. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Great to have so many of you here. What a beautiful day to be on the campus of Northwood University. Anytime I see students in shorts in February, I know it's a good day. So on behalf of our Board of Trustees, I want to welcome all of you here today, and in particular our special guest, Dr. Bob Grubb, who comes back to his alma mater and who my colleague, Kristen Stahauer, is going to do a formal introduction. But I will say that I was at Bob and Julie's house in Colorado, Mary Ellen and I, just a couple of weeks ago. And undoubtedly, where Bob lives is a wonderful part of the country. His house is beautiful. There's no doubt you're going to hear inspiration tonight from a serial entrepreneur and someone who knows how to run and lead and grow businesses. But what I was exposed to in our time with Bob is someone who I would hope that our students in particular could get inspired by, that being a great business person means going beyond running the business. It means being interested in other things like his terrific collection of art and an exceptional wine room that he has. But more than all of that, tonight you're going to hear from a beautiful human being who's going to tell you really important stories that I think should have an impact on you. So Bob will have a formal introduction. And Bob, it's so good to have you back on campus. So thank you for being here. I'll also say, look, we have faculty here. Colleagues, thank you for coming. Staff are here. Colleagues, thank you for coming. Students, this is what a university education is all about, you know, that you go outside of the classroom and expose yourself to these types of learning experiences. So I thank you for being here. But there was a professor who deeply impacted Bob on his campus, Dale Haywood. And Marcia, it's so good to have you here today back on campus. Welcome. And someone that I have been inspired, the average lifespan for a president of a university in America today is now down to 6 years for a variety of different reasons. The fact that Dr. David Fry led this institution for a quarter of a century is remarkable. And Claudia, it is great that you are here on campus, and I welcome you. And many of you know we are going to celebrate David and his impact on Northwood and this community and his life on June 1st in NADA. And I welcome all of you to join the Northwood family and the Fry family on that special day. So Claudia, it's great to have you back on campus as well. Yeah. And so what's this all about? This is deeply what many of us understand a university is meant to be. This is an academic institution. And we are supposed to open our minds to different views and perspectives. And a lot of campuses talk about diversity on campus. That's important. One of the greatest aspects of diversity is diversity of thought and thinking through things. And that's where this session came from, as Kristen's going to put into perspective. And it was inspired by James Duderstadt in a book that he wrote in the early 2000s. Dr. Duderstadt was the president of University of Michigan. He wrote, I thought, one of my most interesting, the books that I found most interesting on leading of a university. And it happened to be called A View from the Helm. So that's for students and other guests here. That's where we were inspired by this name, and that we've been having these sessions, and this is our sixth one. But to frame better the academic perspective here is a researcher, an academic. She also serves as our registrar. Dr. Marissa Hernandez is here, and I ask Marissa to come on up and frame this from why this is important from an academic point of view. Thanks, Marissa.
Thank you, President McDonald. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Students, faculty, staff, community members, for attending this evening's series of View from the Helm. We're very excited that you're here to join us. Tonight's discussion is going to center around the importance of people. So I'm going to say that word a lot tonight, people, and relationships and the role that they play in our everyday lives. So students, let's take a trip back to your Principles of Marketing and Management courses. Okay, remember that concept of the 5 principles of marketing. Does anybody remember it? I won't make you repeat it. Just raise your hand if you remember them. Right? Okay, so they're product, price, promotion, place, and what? People. That's right. Now let's think about the 5 basic principles of management. Does anybody remember them? There's lots of different concepts, but for the purpose of this, we're going to say that the 5 principles of management are planning, organizing, staffing, which is what? People, leading, and controlling. Okay? So notice that leading, working, and communicating with people are all at the heart of these principles. right? So, and this concept of leading and communicating with people is also demonstrated in our spring OmniQuest selection, which is leadership and self-deception. So the key insight from our text here of this book is that leadership lies in not what we do, but who we are as individuals. It's a very profound statement. When we truly see others as people and not objects, it helps us engage in a more collaborative and productive way. So to help us put these concepts into a more practical context, Dr. Grubb will share with us how changing one's mindset can drive organizational change and personal development. So now it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's moderator, Dr. Kristen Stahauer. She's the Northwood University Academic Vice President and Provost. She earned her doctorate in international relations at Northwestern and has completed postgraduate work in higher education at Harvard. Her business career is focused on strategy formation and implementation, continuous quality improvement, and she has worked with large and small organizations spanning many business sectors. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Kristen Stahauer.
Thank you so much, Marissa, and I would add to the welcome to everyone joining us, both here in the McNair Center, a full house, and the many joining us via live streaming. Dr. Robert Grubb is joining us for the 6th in our series in which we hear from C-suite leaders. As President McDonald said, leadership insights, a view from the Helm. Bob invests his professional efforts as a lifelong builder of people and organizations that grow and innovate. Passionate about the Northwood idea, Bob considers himself a student of liberty and works with people to help them remove their self-imposed preconceived limits. He'll be telling us a bit more about that later. He's managing director of Mount Audubon Associates, a private holding company he and his wife, Julie, started in 1999. Over the course of his career, Bob has founded 3 companies in multiple sectors and built one of them to great success from modest beginnings. Bob merged a company he founded, DTM Products, Inc., with a large global contract manufacturer, Flex, which resulted in Bob being a division president responsible for manufacturing sites in Canada, Mexico, China, and Hungary, in addition to Colorado. Bob was also a co-founder of Alliant National Title Insurance Company, where he led the executive team from the company's inception as an idea in 2005 until 2020. Bob and his team grew Alliant National into the 8th largest title insurer in the industry, licensed in about 35 states, with revenue of over $230 million. Bob generously gives his time and expertise by serving as a director on numerous boards, corporate and nonprofit. And since 2013, Bob has served as a trustee of Northwood University. He's the chair of the Advancement Committee and a member of the Executive Committee. He also served on the President's Task Force on the renewal of the Northwood idea. He serves on the advisory board for the Arbinger Institute and on the board of directors of the Boulder chapter of Young Presidents Organization. As you heard, Bob graduated from Northwood University. He earned a Bachelor of Business Administration degree and Associate of Arts degree in Monetary Theory and an Associate of Arts in Automotive Marketing. He studied for his MBA at Babson College, where he received the Graduate Student Service Award for his contribution to the redevelopment of their undergraduate economics curriculum. He received Northwood University's highest honor, Doctor of Laws honoris causa, in May of 2008. He is also a graduate of the Colorado Outward Bound Wilderness Survival Course and a certified facilitator for the Arbinger Institute, the author of our OmniQuest selection. Bob's professional expertise is best described as seeing an interplay of systems which either help sustain or harm organizations. His expertise includes establishing mission, values with ethical boundaries, guiding principles, corporate strategy, developing cultures of customer focus and personal responsibility, team member development, all as catalysts to drive collaboration and innovation. But most importantly, he is an inspiring leader. You are an inspiration to me, and I know you'll be an inspiration to our audience tonight. Please help me welcome formally Dr. Robert Grubb.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Bob, welcome. We've been looking forward to this with great anticipation, and really happy to have you here tonight.
I'm grateful to be here. Very grateful to be here.
And for the rest of our audience too, he has a packed 2 days on campus, meeting with students, meeting with employees, and so this is just one of those high points and milestones of your visit. Thank you so much for all that you're investing in Northwood.
My pleasure.
So how about if we get around to that people point that Dr. Hernandez mentioned? What traits and skills do you look for when you build a team?
What skills and traits that are very different than mine is, what I look for first and foremost. I have a perspective. I know that perspective, but I know that, there's no such thing as a 360-degree individual. I can't see the entire landscape, and you can get a lot closer with a team, right? Maybe not all the way, but you can get a lot closer with the team, and so, that. I always look for the talents and the skills that I don't have that the organization needs, right? And so part of it's dictated by the roles in the organization, and then part of it's dictated by, personalities, even down to basic personality traits like my wife teases me, although I don't know that teasing is the right word because it's too accurate maybe to be a tease. And she calls me ready, fire, aim, right? And so, and she's a lot more thoughtful, right? And I know that I do better with people around me on my team that are like, hold on, we got to figure out how we're going to do what we want to do, right? Before we just run off and do it. And so, things simple like that, regardless of the skills, right? It's the balance of personalities on the team. So a balance of thoughtful people, balance of people that are more highly responsive to the environment around them, in addition to skills. So does that make sense?
Sure does.
Okay.
Thank you for that. What do you see as the major challenges in today's business world, and what do you foresee as the future of business?
So that's an interesting question, and of course, I'm going to answer that from the perspective of a 65-year-old man. Okay, and so you got to understand where I sit before you understand where I stand, right? So, if I think about that from my perspective, my generation's perspective, right? As the generation that you're in, Generation Xers, they think they're being social when they're not being social by our definition. And I'm not trying to say that one definition is right or wrong, because I think that both of them are right in some respects. But what I am saying is that you guys are in a generation where your peers don't naturally communicate well in writing and on the phone and in other ways. And those skills that you learn here at Northwood will set you apart. Your ability to communicate and collaborate with other people, and not there are millennials and Xers who I can't pick up the phone. In the workplace, that's what they think. I can't pick up. Why would I have to pick up the phone? I can just email this person, right? And understanding, when that personal touch or that voice-to-voice contact or that face-to-face contact is appropriate will be really important to your business career. It will set you apart because most of your generation will be less informed about that. So how did a kid from outside of Chicago, end up at Northwood so many years ago? I thought you were going to ask how I got kicked out, but well, we'd love to hear that too. So, My dad died a couple of weeks after my high school graduation, and so I really wasn't thinking about college or anything. And my mom had a friend whose son went to Northwood, and some number of years out of Northwood, I don't know if it was 5 or 6 or 8 years, built his own auto leasing business, became very successful, and she knew that I liked cars, and she encouraged me to take a look. And at that point, I was a stock clerk in a grocery store in Chicago, and the guy that ran our team was phenomenal. He was an ex-Marine, and learned so much from him. But anyway, I knew that that's not something I wanted to do the rest of my life. And it's not the kind of thing that was going to earn me the living that I wanted to raise my family. And so I went to Northwood and took a look, and I did not have the grades to get in here. Flat out. I don't even know how I graduated from high school, honestly. And I didn't think I was any good at book learning, but Jack King, who was head of admissions at the time, said, look, we'll give you a shot, but you got to maintain the C average, which sounded simple on the surface. So that's something I could agree to, but it wasn't easy to do. So, but I did. And I got to Northwood, and I went to a high school with 2,600 kids. And so, I think everybody fell through the crack there. I'm not sure, but obviously everybody didn't, but I did. And but there was no falling through the crack at Northwood, because when my professors saw me struggle, they'd make time for me, whether it was after class or during office hours or in a stairwell or something like that. They'd make time, and that was a real that made the difference for me, because they pushed me to try harder and to work harder and to learn more. And the more I did that, the more I got really interested in learning and became hungry, really became hungry. And, actually, because of them, people like Dr. Haywood, I'm here with you today. And that's why when I said I was grateful to be here, I mean, I'm grateful to be here because I'm grateful for what those people gave to me in my life. They changed the trajectory of my life. I promise you. So thank you, Dr. Haywood.
Yeah. And Jack King also.
Yeah, Jack King. Yeah, he gave me the shot.
Are there others who come to mind?
Oh, yeah. Bob Ellis, who was an advertising professor, and he was involved in, the creation of the Mustang and the Cougar, and he's such an interesting guy. Bill Davenport, who ran the term in Europe program that I went on, who he could turn any painting, any piece of architecture, any sculpture into a story. He had been a writer for National Geographic, and he would tell a story. And there were, 20, 25 of us in that term of Europe, and we're juniors in college. We were distracted. We're in Europe. We're having fun, and he could corral us in about a minute and have us captivated through the stories that he told us. And anyway, him and Larry Reed, who's the founder of the Mackinac Center, and Dr. Watts. I was fortunate enough to have Dr. Watts for my first philosophy class. There's many. Oh, Jeff Bennett, who called me out in my first accounting course because I was flunking, and he did his homework, and he knew that my stepfather was an accountant, and he called me in his office, and he said, "You're better than this. You're flunking. Do you know it?" Yeah, I kind of know it, And he said, "You're better than this." And so, and your roommate, he knew my roommate was an accounting major, and he knew he had somehow gone and gotten a file and figured out that my stepfather was an accountant. And he said, "You sure you want to go home with this grade in accounting?" I'm like, "No, sir, I don't." He said, "I'll tell you what, you get an A on the final, you get a C in the course." And man, I got an A on that final. That's what I mean by, I didn't fall through the cracks, and they pushed me. They didn't give me anything. They pushed me. They saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And they pushed me to work harder and to do better. So
So you also gave us a teaser a little bit ago about almost getting kicked out. It sounds like you didn't fall through the cracks in that respect either.
No, but I actually did get kicked out.
Okay.
And it was that freshman year, the last day of Thanksgiving break. I'm in the Al Andrews' dorm room in Du Bois Hall, and we're playing backgammon, and we've been playing for hours. And that evening we got a dump of snow. I don't know, we must have gotten like 6 inches in a few hours, so finally we finished like this one game, and Al's looking out the window. He goes, "Man, this is really cool." And I said, "Yeah." And I didn't quite get what he was saying. He goes, "Yeah, I've never seen snow before in my life." I'm like, "What? You've never seen snow?" I've never seen. So, we went outside, and I said, "You got to see what you can do in a car in snow," right? So I had a rear-wheel drive Camaro, and so we putzed over because, the snow was thick, and you're not going to go fast in a rear-wheel drive car in 6 inches of snow, and putzed over to the parking lot, almost empty, between Jordan, kind of facing Jordan, and the Bennett Sports Center, and did a handful of donuts and then putts back and parked, and we had the tunes cranking and stuff. And we get out of the car, and there's a big old station wagon blocking me in my parking space, and there's a guy that steps out, and he is yelling at the top of his lungs for my student ID, which I gave to him, right? And he looks at it, and he goes, "Grubb, tomorrow morning, my office, bags packed." And he got in his car and he left. And I look at Al and I go, "You know who that guy is?" He goes, "Yeah, man, that's the dean of students." So Al told me where his office was. I went down the next morning. He called my parents, who were in an earlier time zone, woke them up, and they thought I had been seriously injured or something, and let them and me know that I was suspended until January, and that pending further review of other disciplinary action. And so I thought maybe I was going to be expelled. I didn't know, so I left. And a couple of weeks later, Dean Bromley called, and he offered me the opportunity to come back, but I'd be on academic and social probation for the rest of the school year. I wasn't allowed to have a car on campus. Could have figured that, right? And I had to maintain my grades. And so I guess to be fair, maybe part of the reason I'm here with you tonight is Dean Bromley, because I had to buckle down and make sure I had made my grades. And by that time, I had enough of my professors, at the friends that I had developed, the interest that I had in what I was learning, that I wanted to buckle down, right? You can't do something you don't want to do. You're not going to do something well that you don't want to do. And so I wanted to do well.
What was your favorite place on campus as a student?
Well, that's a great question. I think, does City Forest count?
It's nearby.
So probably my favorite place on campus was, that area between Jordan and Strosacker, just because when classes would break, that was the biggest kind of gathering of kids, and then the student union. But after classes were over, I had a couple of buddies that were, a year ahead of me, and we go out to City Forest and walk around, and there might have been a beer or two involved, and we would literally talk about, Dr. Watts's class or Dr. Haywood's class, or what they were learning and what we were learning and what the concept was, and how does that apply, and so that cohort of the three of us, I think. First of all, I needed the extra help, and that was a really fun way to get it, right, with those two guys.
And you had a tour of campus earlier today. What struck you about the new campus environment? I would have been really motivated to go here if campus was like this, and the dorms were like this. It was really different. When in Du Bois, I think we had in the suites, right? There were 2 in one room and 4 in the other. So there were 6 of us in the suite. And if you can imagine that, those are tight. You're shaking your head. Those were tight quarters. And it's always been a beautiful campus, but now there's all these additions that I've had the benefit of seeing as a trustee, and that really just make it such a great place to be. So. What advice would you give your younger self?
I would say, Bob, you don't think you're being stubborn, but you're being stubborn. And back off. There's a lot to learn from the people around you. And that's not to say that I wasn't learning, but I think the advice I wish I had taken would be to back off more. I think I was so strong-headed and strong-willed that I didn't stop and really listen to older, more experienced people around me in a way that I could, and that would really help me.
This is a wonderful segue into our OmniQuest selection, leadership and self-deception, and all of the Arbinger tools. You are on their advisory board, you're a facilitator for them, and you have transformed multiple organizations with these tools. In a nutshell, what is the difference that those tools have made in your career and your personal life?
Julie and I have 3 kids, and our middle kid, she's not a kid, she's an adult. She's got a master's in social work, and she's a certified Arbinger facilitator. But Nikki said, "Hey, you gotta read this stuff from Brene Brown. I mean, this is pretty impressive stuff." And so I think one of the things that sticks out in a nutshell, and I'll paraphrase Brene Brown, is she says that it's not just what we know, right? What you know is what you're learning in your college experience. It's not just what we know. It's who we are and how we do our work. And so think about it this way. You could be the most technically skilled person on the planet in something. But if you can't get along with other people and understand what makes them tick, you're going to have a rough go of it. Dale Haywood, when he was my professor, he talked about this, but he talked about it in a way. We had a management course, and we had to read this old book from the 1930s, I think, called "How to Win Friends and Influence People" by Dale Carnegie. And that was the context of our discussions for an entire term in management. And it taught me a lot. I mean, a lot about how to see other people. And I think, Arbinger's work is about seeing the humanity of other people. In other words, I'm a person and equal in my personhood to you. And in order for me to not see you as a person, I have to see you as something less than. So that's what Arbinger works with are fundamental elements of our human psychology, fundamental elements of our human nature, and they help us frame some of those issues and help us frame how to deal with those issues in productive ways. We all objectify other people. Part of it is that, as human beings, we take a massive amount of stimulus into our brains, every minute of every day that we're awake. We take a massive amount you got to filter it, right? The brain's got to filter. And part of the filtering is you're unconsciously or consciously discarding other people because they're not relevant to you, or they don't have something to offer you, or something like that. Or maybe they get in your way and they're an obstacle to something that you want. Well, then you objectify them because they're an obstacle. And so understanding how this works, and I think this was the essence of Haywood's course was, if you don't understand human nature and how it works, then you're going to feel the pain of not understanding other people. You're just going to feel it, and it's going to cause you problems, right? So in a nutshell, I think I almost lost track of the question now. I mean, it's not just what you know, but what's more important is who you are and how you do your work. Yeah, you got to have the skill set. No ifs, ands, or buts. You got to have the skill set. But your effectiveness in your career, your effectiveness in your ability to collaborate with colleagues is in who you are as an individual and how you do your work with them, how you respect them, how you see them.
And I know from a prior conversation, you mentioned that the founder of the Arbinger Institute talked about this objectifying, or they sometimes refer to it as being inward.
Yeah.
That if he was outward 50% of a day, it was a great day. So this isn't just other people. This is us, kind of the human nature hardwired. Could you speak to that? Because I think it's not just, other people do those things, but we're always tempted to default to that, I think. And how do we make sure that we're outward?
Yeah, so great question. And yeah, we all are bounced between being in an inward mindset. We talk about there's two mindsets, and I can do anything in one of two ways. Anything. I can approach a problem, a person, a team. I can do anything in one of two ways. I can do it from an inward mindset or an outward mindset. And an inward mindset is when I come to that problem or that team or whatever, focused on my results. And an outward mindset is when I come to that same situation, and I'm focused on my results, but I'm focused on what are the results that others in this team have to achieve? What are they responsible for? And knowing their responsibility, how do I meet my responsibilities in a way that helps them meet theirs, right? Because then we're actually working together in kind of a together kind of way. So it's important because, like I said, what Terry Warner is the founder of the Arbinger Institute, and what he's really working with is a problem in modern psychology that was unearthed in the mid 1800s by I think the guy's name is Berber, but it's the problem that Freud and Jung and all these guys were grappling with, and it's this problem of how we self-deceive. In fact, there's a great quote from Plato about how is it possible that we know what is right to do and yet we do the wrong thing. I'm paraphrasing and I'm butchering as I paraphrase. I mean, Plato said it much more eloquently. And so in modern psychology, this idea that we can deceive ourselves into thinking that we're doing something right and good, and we're actually not. And we don't even see that we're doing it. How is that even possible? And Terry Warner explored that, and the Arbinger Institute has developed over time the tools that help us frame what this is like so that we can see it operate in our lives. And the point is to see it operate in our lives, because we're constantly, it depends on, you run into a person that you got a bone to pick with, right? And you just run into them. You might have been having the happiest day, and then all of a sudden your disposition changes because of that person you run into. Okay, so you just shifted from an outward to an inward mindset, and that shift is really important, because when we're inward, we don't see the world the same way. We see it in kind of a distorted way, and so but we bounce back and forth between being inward and outward all day long. I mean, it depends on the situation that we're in, the people that we're with, and people that we're with kind of, they kind of tend to guide us into one mindset or the other. I mean, like I was saying, if I bump into somebody that I really don't like, right, I'm going to be on edge with that person in a way that I'm not if I bump into Andy Kripe. If I bump into Andy Kripe, it's going to be like, just so relaxed and enjoyable, right? So there's just a big difference, and that's why we bounce back and forth every day. And then there's situations I can be with my wife, and then she can ask me a question about something that I promised to do, but I failed to do, and all of a sudden I'm kind of upset. But I'm upset at me, right? I'm not upset at her, but I might take it out on her. Well, that's an inward mindset. And so when we're inward, we tend to blame and mistreat others. And that blame and mistreatment then is an invitation for them to do the same to us, right? And so we can't help our human nature because it's part of how we were wired. It's just part of how we were wired. But we can be aware of it and learn to be a lot better at not placing blame on others for something that we did, which is a really natural thing to do. It happens in about a nanosecond. I mean, it happens so fast. So come to the keynote tomorrow, you'll learn more.
Yeah, lunch and learn keynote at noon tomorrow. What life experiences have changed you the most, Bob?
There's been a lot, and there's been a string of them, and I would say the early 3 early parts of the string. One was my stepfather, just because of who he was. He never talked much about his beliefs, but you knew where he stood by who he was and how he interacted with other people. And the second is my whole Northwood experience, for sure, because honestly, just the environment here allowed me to thrive in a way that I never thought it was unimaginable to me. And the third piece I'd say is Colorado Outward Bound School. I did that between sophomore and junior year, and spent a month in the wilderness and in a small patrol with there was 10 of us, and your life is dependent upon each other, and I mean genuinely dependent upon each other. You go to an inward mindset hard, and you're jeopardizing a lot of all those people, and so physically, mentally, emotionally, your life is dependent upon each other. And I learned a lot out of that experience. Also, it helped me expand. And then there's a lot of other experiences that I could string together. But the commonality between those experiences is finding a place to expand my view of the world. And to the extent that I kept on expanding it, and learning more, I gained, you gain perspective, and then you mess up enough times and you gain wisdom, because truly, I mean, failures are as much as developing wisdom, maybe more than successes, and we all fail.
You mentioned your stepfather a couple of times already, Samuel R. Murata.
Yeah.
The namesake of the Samuel R. Murata Faculty Ethics Award.
Yes.
And that's something that our senior class votes on the faculty member who has most influenced them in their own ethical development. Could you tell us a bit about what led you to establish that award? And we have the gorgeous, and afterwards we encourage you to come up and take a look at this. It rotates around too, Bob.
Yeah.
Could you, look at that. And there's a plaque that goes along with this, but this is the statue that is displayed in the library and the Strosacker Learning Commons, and it really means a lot to Northwood. We'd love to hear what led you to establish it.
Dale Haywood. You want more? Okay.
Let's hear more.
So Dale Haywood, at the spring semester senior year, I had him for like a policy class, like capstone course in business. And I told you about my 2 friends at Northwood. They were a year ahead of me, and they told me which professors to take. And they said, your grades won't be as good, but you're going to learn a lot more. These guys are great. Take my anchor and take Dale Haywood, and, take the harder professors because you'll learn more. Nobody cares about grades, And so I'm not sure that they were completely right, but it was really great advice, because I did. I took the professors that were challenging, and I learned more. But Dale said spring semester junior year, he challenged us. He said, you're going to go out and you're going to go out in the world, and in 10 or 20 years, you're going to start to have, you'll be able to reflect on what impact Northwood had in your life. And when you reflect on that impact, if you feel that Northwood was impactful, then find a way to reward that impact for others that follow you. That was his challenge, right? And so Dale impacted me in particular. So one time I came to campus to visit, and it was to see him. First of all, my wife and I talked about this. I wanted to do it, and she was behind it, and I'll explain the art in a minute. Kent said that I have an art collection. I don't. We do, Julie and I, and it's something that we've really enjoyed doing together. And I'll come back to that. But anyway, so I met with Dale, and I said, my stepfather is a mountain of a man, and I don't know where I'd be without his example. He never talks much, but boy, does he live it. And so, I grew up, I say socially Christian. So I grew up going to church a few times a year on important holidays, and my stepfather was Catholic, and so he'd go to church every Sunday. And for the longest time, 1 week my folks would go to Protestant church, and then they go to the Catholic church the next week. But every time he went to church, he said, "I'm going to church. I'll pray for you." And he just had a way of living his faith without ever talking about it. And it was crystal clear that, where his ethical boundaries were, and, that there's a clear right and wrong, and that our rights are inalienable and given to us by God. And so, all that stuff was very powerful. So I went to Haywood and I said, how do I honor this? And he said, well, how do you want to honor it? And I said, well, he was like the most ethical person. He was alive then. I said, he's like the most ethical person I know. And by this time I had been, running companies and everything. And so I really had a perspective on this guy. And Haywood and I worked together and to conceive an award that's bestowed by the graduating class to the professor who most inspired them to think outside of themselves about their impact on others and about the role of God in their life. Jewish God, Christian God, Muslim God, Muslim God, I don't care, but just about the role of God in your life, right? And so what was important to me, and I think to Dale, is that this was something that the graduating class decided on, because it was a private vote of, where they were getting this kind of impact, right? And I think that was important to Dale, because he wanted the customers to be able to vote about what was meaningful to them, so that the faculty had the feedback loop and of understanding it. So that's how the award came about. And then Julie and I found an artist. She grew up in Colorado in a ranching family, and she either sculpts something and writes a poem, or she writes a poem that inspires a sculpture. And I forget which this was, but one inspired the other. There's a poem and the sculpture. And the background is that she remembers growing up. Both her grandpa and her dad were cattlemen, and she remembers when the Cattlemen's Association in Colorado decided that all the contracts needed to be in writing, right? You got to write it down. And she remembers her dad and her grandfather grumbling about that, right? And so this is a statue of a cattleman shaking hands with a cattle broker, right, on a deal. And I'll read you the poem. It's very short. It says, when two people meet, an agreement made, the terms of the deal, the plans are laid. Each one gives their seal by the grip of their hand, and on their word of honor, they take a stand. These days, there are contracts all written out, so there's nothing to dispute about. But if a person can't stand on their word understood, a piece of paper won't make it good. And it's true. That's why there's courts.
You mentioned being socially Christian when you were younger, but your faith plays a big role in your life now.
Yeah. Yeah, when Julie and I got married, which will be 38 years ago in May, she was raised much in the same way that I was, socially Christian, but there was something inside of us. We believed wholeheartedly that God was in charge, and and we needed to learn about our faith. So we wanted to be married in a Christian ceremony, because we knew enough that was important to us. And then prior to having kids, and when we first had kids, we joined a church and attended some Bible studies, much more so than the services, to just try and learn. We spent like a year on the New Testament and a year on the Old Testament, and just try to really get our arms wrapped around it, and our head wrapped around it. And from that, we both came to faith and baptism in the church where we're currently members. And so I would describe myself as an evangelical Christian, and which I'm sure the left could have a lot of fun with, but anyway.
Thanks for sharing that. What advice would you have for someone starting their career?
My stubbornness was subtle. So I was perfectly willing to learn about things that I was comfortable with, but the things that I was uncomfortable with, I got stubborn about. If you get stubborn about the things you're uncomfortable with, I'd encourage you to go embrace it. Go dig in and figure it out, because to the extent that you start putting some of that stuff off in a sidecar, it builds up. It will hinder your progress, not just in your career, but your progress as a human being in your community.
Thank you for that. Our time is drawing short, and we're ready to take some questions.
All right.
So we have a couple online to get us rolling, and there's a microphone right over there for those in the room. You can please approach the microphone and ask a question live. But here's one. You were asked to sit on the President's Task Force on the review and renewal of the Northwood idea. Why is the Northwood idea so important to you?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, because I think the Northwood idea really, it really captures, Dr. Watts really captures, I mean, reading it today, his language is a little different than the language we would use today. It's worth your time to read. Because he talks about commerce and free enterprise as a catalyst to human development, right? I don't mean just like my development individually as a human, but to the development of our community, of our nation, right? He talks about how interlinked all of that is, and it is interlinked. And I think that, the older I got, the more meaningful the Northwood idea became. And he finishes the Northwood idea with some kind of a statement about that he thought that the most distinctive feature of the Northwood idea was that our graduates would view a profession in business not just as a way to affluence, but as a way to develop better communities and be a better person and utilize the highest talents that God has given us. And I think there's a symbiotic relationship. I mean, with limited government, free enterprise, yeah, you got to have regulation. There's you got to be careful. What the limits are. I think the founders of our country were divinely inspired. It's a remarkable structure. I know a lot of people don't respect it these days. It's a remarkable structure if we pay attention to the structure, and the benefits of that are, there's prosperity for people who are, we're all unequal, right? We don't look alike. We don't act alike. We all have different traits and abilities. We're all unequal, and some of us succeed more than others. And I have most of my friends are more successful than I am financially, but but there's more to it. It's about the communities that we build within our family, within the communities that we live within our country. And the Northwood idea, I think, does such a crisp job articulating that. And, life would be very different without the grand experiment of the great United States of America. And it would be very, very different. And I don't think any of us want that difference for our kids and grandkids and our great-grandkids. I hope you don't, because you can, if you want to see what that looks like, go to Venezuela, go to Russia, go to any number of countries, go to Iran, So.
Thank you. Here's a good one from online. What are you passionate about? What gets you up in the morning?
So I had the first company I built was a high precision manufacturing company, and merged that with Flex, as you mentioned, and worked with them for a while. But I needed to let go because our kids were like 9, 8, and 5 at the time, and I needed to be with my family because I really had to be somewhere other than Colorado all the time with my responsibilities. And so I actually went through a pretty hard time after I retired from Flex. I was 40 years old, and I never would have thought that I had placed so much of my self-worth into my position, but I did, and that's what I was struggling with. So one of the questions that came up as I was working through that is, why the heck did I even do it? Why did I take, capital intensive manufacturing business, and I owned, other than the stock that I gave away to my key employees, I owned it. And that meant that I was borrowing millions and millions of dollars. Every time we needed to expand, I had this much equity and then that much more debt, right? And because it's a capital intensive business. And, and I used to joke around that my mountain bike tires were leveraged by the bank, right? They're collateralized by the bank, right? Why? Why? And the answer came to me after and the answer is Becky Furr. And Becky was a quality technician in our company who had submitted her name to be quality manager, and I didn't select her. And she came into my office and she shut the door and she plopped herself down. She was probably 20. She had a high school education. She goes, "I know why you picked Paul. He's got a college education." And I said, "No, Becky, that's not why I picked Paul." But, and she's like, "That's why you picked Paul." I said, "No, there's other reasons." And so I kind of told her about it. And she said, "Well, I want to go to college and I want to know what you can do about it." And I'd say, and we had a profit sharing plan that was set up by the prior owners, and it was the coolest thing ever because I was the trustee, and I could loan people money from their profit sharing account, and they had to pay a market rate of interest under IRS rules, but I could loan them money for a car, a home equity, or for education. But she wanted to get her bachelor's, and she said, I don't want to take money out of there. I want a tuition reimbursement program. So I said, okay, if you get A, I'll pay 100%. If you get a B, I'll pay 50%. If you get a C or anything less, nothing. She said, okay, that's good. So she graduated with a degree in biology, going to night school, and she had to work night shifts sometime because her labs were during the day. And she graduated, I don't know, in 6 years or so. And I don't think she paid 1 red cent. I think I paid the whole darn thing, which was great, right? And then like 6 weeks later, we had our company, after she graduated, we had our company summer party. And she came up to me and she said, "Hey, I want to borrow off my profit sharing plan." I said, "Why?" She said, "Well, I had this professor that kept on telling me to apply for medical school in the pharmacology department. And so I did, and I got accepted." And so she borrowed from herself. And the cool thing about that profit sharing plan is they paid a market rate of interest, but that market rate of interest accrued only to her account, not to other people in the plan. So she was basically paying interest to herself, which is pretty cool. She was banking on herself. So anyway, she went and got her pharmacology degree, and she's a pharmacist at a Kroger store that's, 13 miles away from me. That's why I got up in the morning. And what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that I was so inspired by the people who helped me take my self-imposed limits off of me, that what I was motivated was to create conditions where other people could do the same and they could take their self-imposed limits off of them. That's what gets me up in the morning.
Wow, that's very profound. We have another question. I think just time for one more too. So another one that came in online. What advice would you give to a young entrepreneur starting a business today as somebody who's been a successful serial entrepreneur?
I'd say, understand what you're missing in your perspective. What are you missing? And find people that you can feel that you can trust to help give you that perspective. And if you're starting a company from scratch, you're not going to pay people, but you can have an advisory board. You can ask people, hey, will you advise me and be on my advisory board? And you can call them up when you need it, and develop those relationships. Treat those relationships with care and love, and grow those relationships, because those people will help you avoid mistakes that you would otherwise make. I promise you, because I've done it. I've made the mistakes, and then I've gone and gotten the good advice too. So I've done it both ways. It's a lot easier to get the people that have good insight, and listen to them, and be respectful of their time, and get an informal board of advisors in place that gives you the key perspectives that you need for the next 6 months or the next year. I don't know what the growth rate is, how fast you're growing. It doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. Do it for a short period of time. Thank them, take them out to lunch, whatever, and then keep in touch with them after that, and then refill that group of advisors with with the next set of talents that you need, right, for the next phase of growth.
Any other questions from the room? Okay, well, Dr. Grubb, thank you for investing your time in helping all of us learn more about your success and the keys to it. And we also are just thankful for all that you do as a proponent of Northwood University.
Thank you for having me.
And to wrap things up, I heard a clap. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
And to wrap things up, we have an inspiring leader in her own right, Lauren Bennett, to say a few words about her key takeaways. She's a graduate student in the DeVos Graduate School of Management, earning her MBA. Lauren Bennett.
Thank you, Dr. Grubb, for investing your time and helping us learn your keys to success. When I came in here this afternoon, Dr. Grubb, I stood up and shook his hand, and he said, Kent said that I would like you a lot. We're a lot alike. So when President McDonald came up here and said that you were a beautiful soul, and he introduced you as that, my ears perked up a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and pat myself on the back for that one.
Just run with it.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely took that one. I come to you all as a unique perspective. I'm a student here. I'm in the DeVos Graduate School, but I'm also a staff member. I work for advancement, and I'm also a young business owner. So all of what you spoke about tonight was extremely meaningful to me. Talking about relationships, about people. I'm a huge relationship person. If we don't have relationships, I don't think we have anything. So there are a couple key points that I just wanted to remind us all before we leave tonight that we can all ponder. The first of those being the skills and traits that are different from me are what you want to look for in other people. So not only when you're, owning your own business or hiring those, but what do you look for in those around you in your friend group, on your team, in your work task force? How can you be different from those around you, and how can you help others be different from you? It's a balance of those personality skills, but also those life skills. I'm a young person on my team. I work with differing ages, but a lot of times I can work with things like Canva, which some of my team members maybe aren't so keen with. But I think that that's a really important thing to stick with us. There's a lot to learn from those around you, which goes off of this again. Learning from your daughter, I think that's really cool. Brene Brown is somebody who I really invest my time in, and looking into the words that she speaks from the heart, in those things, who we are and how we do our work. That's really important. I think that played really well into what you were teaching us all here tonight. So thinking about and reflecting upon in ourselves, who are we? Who do we want to be? What do we want our work to show for us? The inward and outward mindset, that's not something that I was familiar with before you spoke. So that was something that definitely I had to jot down, and I will definitely look more into that later. But the thought of being inward and looking in upon ourselves when we go to a meeting, or when we're talking to our friends, or when we're on the field with our teammates, instead of doing that, looking outward. It's not only, okay, what is the group goal here, but what is everybody's individual goals, right? How can I get them to get their goals while I'm also simultaneously getting my goal, and we're working together as a team and moving forward. Taking self-imposed limits off of others, that was very special too. I think that just shows who you are at your heart. And I think that at the end of the day, our heart is what sets us aside from other people, and you have a good one. So I'm glad to be compared to you. That was very nice. So I challenge you all to walk out of here and reflect upon within yourselves. How will I be remembered? How am I going to share Northwood with others, not just those here, but outside of these walls? And don't talk about it. Colossians says in the Bible that it's important to show others who you are by talking about it, or not by talking about it, but by walking and by doing those things so that people can see you and they can see who you are by what you do. So, to wrap things up, thank you again for allowing us to benefit from this. And we have a little thank you of Northwood University's Leadership Insights, a view from the Helm, to show our appreciation to you.
Thank you, Juan. I think we're supposed to try this again, right?
I'm just going to say
Well done.
Okay.
Great job.
So those were remarkable words, Lauren. Thank you very, very much. I'll also think it's important, and all of our students can take this to heart as well, that in life you can decide to be an observer or to get in on the field and do things and make a difference. And while Lauren is still with us as a student, her campaign that she launched here in very short time when she joined us here at Northwood, the I Hear You campaign, is really important for a university campus. And Lauren, I just want to say in a very public way, thank you for doing that for us. It's touched a lot of people. We have refreshments in the back, but I do want to thank Bob Grubb for his wonderful, wonderful remarks. It's as a president, one of the great things you get to do, and I'll get to do it with so many of you here today after you graduate, is you get to go out and meet these people who spent time on this campus, who had their hearts and minds shaped and their dreams in a way partly fulfilled. And Northwood graduates go out and do just incredible things that over and over again, they have shown that they punch way above their weight class. And Bob Grubb is one of those individuals. And Bob, so it's been a real blessing to have you back on campus. And the keynote tomorrow at noon, I really encourage all of you to come to that. When Bob, Mary Ellen and I were with Bob in Colorado, he shared some of the things he's been thinking about this for months, about what could have the greatest impact on the audience. And I think you'll be thrilled to give up an hour of your life to listen a little bit more carefully, go a little bit more deeper, wander into deeper waters, and think about what this deception is that we all have in our life. And when we do that, it will make a huge difference. So Bob, we'll look forward to that. Kristen, Kristen is our academic leader. She's a absolute pro when it comes to facilitating this, and she never hesitates to do it. So Kristen, again, thank you for doing it. And all of you, thank you for giving up your time. You could be out there, you could be doing other things, but you chose to either come online or join us here today. And we really appreciate that. So have a great night. For students, I'm going to give you the rest of the week off. And no, you better don't. I've got myself in trouble with yeah, not so fast. Yeah. So go. Let me change that. Go to the library and have a great night, everybody. Thank you very much.